In Ola Ovito, on his outstanding 2001 album The Blueprint, Jay-Z boldly claims that he rhymes sicker than every rhyme spitter. Literary critics would argue that that's a clear case of hyperbole, a rhetorical means to accent the truth of his artistic superiority. Poetic principle in service of professional self-promotion. What can't be argued is that Jay-Z's lyrics exult in the lively and luxurious use of such poetic devices. It may be his promiscuous rendezvous with the figurative that makes him the sickest rhyme spitter of all time. But hyperbole is only the top layer of this particular lyric. The reconfiguration of sick as a metaphorical superlative has important roots in the culture. Rap music and African American vernacular English, AAVE, are frequently spiced with ample doses of contronym, a literary mark of playful duality where a two-faced term can suggest its polar opposite in the right context. Consider Run DMC's great line, "Not bad meaning bad, but bad meaning good." Within the lexical universe of hip-hop, sick borrows its most useful double from one of the culture's classic contronyms, ill. Contronymic terms in hip-hop tend toward the superlative spectrum of meaning. The relentless quest for language that adequately describes what black folk experience fuels the refiguring of the negative as the positive. Hence, there is a moral meaning attached to the use of language in black life. Making it plain that speech has ethical consequences helps to filter a certain set of experiences through the prism of hip-hop lyrics. A useful analogy can be made between rapping and preaching. Rappers can be conceived as evangelists who promote the idea that something can come from nothing, and that negative circumstances might produce positive outcomes. Theology and sociology nicely combine. Life in the hood can be ill, that is, sick, undoubtedly in a negative way, but sick too in the superlative sense conjured in the contronymic figuration of the word. Jay-Z makes a compelling claim to be the sickest ever rhyme spitter, even though every generation sends formidable rappers to the microphone, and even though most rhymes are more spoken than spit. But that might lead us down a literary rabbit hole where we debate whether metaphor or metonym best suits the case. Guns N' Roses, the song, not the iconic rock group of the same name, is one of Jay-Z's most intriguing collaborations. Guns N' Roses was produced in 2002 by the late great rapper Heavy D. There are vocal and guitar contributions from Lenny Kravitz, whose rock-tinged licks underscore lyrics that wrestle with the violence and bliss that shape the ups and downs of hustling and rap music. As usual, Jay proclaims his artistic greatness. The Michael Corleone of the microphone, the Michelangelo of flow, I paint pictures with poems. Allusions matter, like those to Italian icons of American pop culture and the High Renaissance, and I'll get to them soon. But the punchline, I paint pictures with poems, is as important an analogy as Jay has ever articulated. In one line, he evokes his career-long allusions to Warhol, Picasso, and Michelangelo, his direct engagement with museum culture, and his affinity and affection for Jean-Michel Basquiat. Jay-Z does not write his rhymes in a traditional sense, and yes, more on that later too. So it may be more accurate to argue that he crafts his images through words. This is more than poetic imagery. It harkens back to the early 20th century poetic movement known as Imagism. That movement featured giants like Ezra Pound and James Joyce, and it called for precise, concrete images drawn from common speech, rhythmic inventiveness, and unlimited topics of engagement, all meant to forge clear expression. It can be argued that the best rap artists embrace the Poundian and Joycean imperatives, but none more or better than Jay-Z. Jay's sublime attraction to poetic and literary devices has been fed by thousands of hours of exercising his craft. That befits his admiration for Malcolm Gladwell, who popularized the notion that mastery is achieved with at least 10,000 hours of practice. Although he told Oprah in O magazine in 2009 that English was his favorite subject in high school, and that Homer's The Odyssey left him feeling dreamy about life partnerships and the concept of returning home, Jay has had little formal training in the craft of writing poetry. His practice still has almost always been intentional, a reference to another of his favorite books that explores the spiritual dimensions of intentional living, Gary Zukav's The Seat of the Soul. That practice began on the street corners of Brooklyn, New York. In a hidden track on the Blueprint album, Jay-Z extends the analogy of lyrically working out on Breathe Easy lyrical exercise. The track opens in medias res, with an interview snippet where Jay describes his writing process. While standing on the corner, dealing crack, Jay would craft and rehearse his rhymes in his mind until he both perfected and memorized them. Breathe Easy bobs and weaves seamlessly through at least 3 forms of exercise, including jogging, sparring, and weightlifting. There are verses but no real hook, except for the extended analogy itself. Jay is rapping about the exercise of rapping, using the language of exercise itself. As he brags on the track, he's in great shape. Braggadocio is the pervasive ethos of Jay-Z's music. If the repetition of a statement or a concept makes it a perceived reality, then Jay has consistently reminded us of how real his greatness is. Given the accumulation of lyrical repetition at work in Jay-Z's boasting about his gifts, the simplest lines at times deliver the most powerful figurative effects. Take his line, "Flyer than a piece of paper bearing my name," from Public Service Announcement. Paper flyers are paper advertisements that are widely distributed by mail, posted in public places, or passed on to individuals. They have an important place in the history of hip-hop. In fact, hip-hop flyers are enshrined in the Harvard Hip-Hop Archive and Research Institute, the Cornell University Hip-Hop Collection, and the National Museum of African American History and Culture. They are concrete, well, metaphorically at least, and if not concrete, then material representations of the culture. The concept of the flyer in hip-hop flies effortlessly in and through this one line. The flyer is an example of an image carefully stamped in a lyric that represents Jay-Z's artistic signature. A throwaway line becomes a classic, much the same way that a flyer to be thrown away becomes a hip-hop staple. Of course, most flyers were single-page advertisements without need of a staple, except to pin them to a tree or billboard, just as Jay's line helped to pin down the performance of Public Service Announcement. But there is more. Flight in African American culture has deep conceptual resonance. There are historical aspirations to flee bondage and to imagine being able to fly away from captivity. The modern notion of being or looking fly is all about style and sartorial excellence. Of course, when Jay suggests that he is flyer than a flyer, a nifty homophone where the words sound the same but have different meanings, he breaks and enters into their homophonic connection to gain figurative access to the wealth of their suggestive meanings. He also plays on the multiple meanings of the term on 2006's Beach Chair, where he says, "Son said, Hove, how you get so fly? I said, from not being afraid to fall out the sky." It is at least a triple entendre embedded in Braggadocio that is committed to the poetic principles of imagism while paying homage to a key artifact of hip-hop's material culture.